Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation I would like to focus on why Bollywood and the Indian intelligence RAW, the research and analysis wing, benefits from the anti-Islam and anti-Pakistan propaganda. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this presentation, and I represent myself only. This presentation is produced for purposes of education, criticism, scholarly analysis, and free expression. It applies established frameworks from media studies, political economy, nationalism theory, and post-colonial scholarship to examine patterns in popular cinema and political narratives. All arguments are analytical and interpretive. Institutions, industries, and states are discussed in terms of incentives, structures, and outcomes rather than allegations of criminal conduct. The goal is critical understanding, not defamation. We look at the research question and central thesis. This presentation examines why antagonistic portrayals of Pakistan and Muslims reoccur in Indian mainstream cinema and what political, economic, and institutional incentives sustain these narratives over time. It argues that such portrayals benefit state legitimacy, market profitability, and elite power structures by reinforcing division, emotional mobilization, and simplified nationalism, basically fear-based mind control and patriotic mind control and programming. We look at the methodology and interpretive scope. The analysis combines peer-reviewed scholarship, content analysis of films, political economy, and post-colonial theory. Documented evidence is clearly distinguished from theoretical synthesis. A dedicated theoretical section presents elite division and power continuity models as analytical frameworks rather than claims of provable conspiracy. We look at Bollywood as political economy. Bollywood operates as a major economic sector intertwined with state regulation, censorship, tax incentives, and political signaling. Film industries historically reflect dominant ideological priorities. State praise, tax exemptions, and symbolic endorsement create incentives for filmmakers to align with nationalist themes, particularly during periods of political consolidation. Nationalism as a profitable narrative. Nationalist storytelling simplifies complex political realities into emotionally accessible narratives, increasing mass appeal and box office performance. This creates a feedback loop in which ideological clarity is financially rewarded, encouraging repetition of familiar tropes. Anti-Pakistan war and spy film patterns. Content analysis of Indian war and espionage films reveals recurring tropes, including moral absolutism, hypermasculine heroes, and a perpetual external threat. These narratives avoid historical nuance, reinforcing a permanent state of antagonism rather than contextual understanding. Muslims and cinematic securitization. Indian Muslims are frequently portrayed through suspicion and surveillance frameworks, echoing global post-9/11 Islamophobic media trends. Such portrayals normalize securitization while marginalizing pluralistic Muslim identities within India's social reality. Colonial governance and elite formation. British colonial administration relied on intermediary elites who mediated power between empire and population. Political independence altered sovereignty, but often preserved elite hierarchies and inherited institutions. So basically, not sparing Pakistan here either, but India and Pakistan and all of these former colonies in Asia and Africa, right? They are given the illusion of freedom, but in reality, the system still serves the colonial powers. The City of London as a post-imperial hub. The City of London Corporation functions as a semi-autonomous global financial center with deep historical ties to imperial capital flows. Former colonial elites continue to route wealth, legal arbitration, and assets through London-based financial systems. And as far as I'm concerned, India and Pakistan are still commonwealths under the City of London Corporation. South Asian elites and London. Indian and Pakistani elites maintain transnational ties through property ownership, finance, and elite education in Britain. This transnational elite convergence contrasts sharply with nationalist hostility promoted domestically. So it's like, professional wrestling, where on stage they pretend to be enemies, right? And keeping their populaces poor, without opportunity, and divided and hostile in this patriot nationalist mind control programming, where even though they're both genetically the same people, they have these artificial identities produced by the British, telling them one is X and one is Y when both of them are X, right? So basically, what we have here is both whose resources are being drained, they're being put against one another. Plus, this whole cinematic thing that I'm covering here is a part of that system of control as well. So yeah, it's all nonsense. Theoretical framework, the elite division model. This section introduces a theoretical model suggesting that sustained India-Pakistan hostility benefits transnational elite stability. The framework emphasizes structural incentives and shared outcomes rather than claims of secret coordination. The lingering British influence, of course, theoretical and allegedly, right, if you know what I'm saying. The model proposes that British influence persists through finance, law, and elite integration rather than direct political control, where on paper, India and Pakistan are free, but not really at the end of the day. Post colonial sovereignty thus coexists with inherited dependency structures. Parallel Indian and Pakistani elites. Despite the public rivalry, elites on both sides of the border share class interests, lifestyles, and capital mobility. London functions as a neutral ground where geopolitical hostility dissolves into shared privilege. I mean, and look at the current political elite of even Pakistan, right? Whenever there's an issue, they all run away to London. So this is what I'm trying to show you in this presentation, even to the Indians who get brainwashed and programmed by the anti-Muslim propaganda in their country. This is all stupid. We all need to come together and uplift each other as a human family and uplift our people and our nations, where we all have to run away to the West in order to survive and find better opportunities, rather than holding our own accountable and making our own countries prosperous. Don't forget the Uganda and Kenya Indians, right? They are part of the imperial legacy. Indian diasporas in East Africa historically served as commercial intermediaries under British colonial rule. This legacy illustrates how imperial systems preserved loyal economic classes across regions. And I've experienced this directly firsthand, right? Where at the time where I had resigned from Freemasonry in America, a Indian from the UK, right, who I believe was a one who came from Kenya that were loyal to the British, he was being used as the brown man intermediary to make me feel comfortable, to get me back into Freemasonry through the United Grand Lodge of England. And I was able to recover from all of that as well and resign from there as well. So, yep, you got to watch out for the tricks and the traps as well to lure you back into systems. Division as a tool of mass management. Political theory suggests divided populations are easier to govern rather than unified ones. External enemies redirect public frustration away from domestic inequality and elite accountability. Patriotism as emotional conditioning. Nationalist cinema functions as emotional programming, reinforcing loyalty while discouraging systematic critique. This aligns with propaganda theory without requiring direct intelligence control. Of course, the research and analysis wing raw, and the narrative alignment is there, of course, theoretical. Intelligence agencies benefit when popular media reinforces security narratives and threat perceptions. Even in America, right, the Project Mockingbird that the CIA does with the media. So support may occur indirectly through access, permissions, and institutional legitimacy rather than scripting. Why unity threatens elite power? A unified Indian-Pakistani working class would possess immense demographic, economic, and cultural power, especially with the talent we have on both sides. The theoretical model suggests elite interests are better served by sustained rivalry. The cost to ordinary people. Ordinary citizens bear the consequences of divisions through poverty, militarization, and lost opportunities for cooperation. Elite lifestyles remain insulated from the material cost of nationalist conflict. Suppressed peace narratives. Films promoting reconciliation and shared humanity receive less institutional and market support. This absence becomes part of the ideological system sustaining division. Comparative global examples. Similar relationships between cinema, nationalism, and power appear in Hollywood, Russian, and Chinese media industries. This suggests a structured global pattern rather than a uniquely South Asian phenomena. Ethics of storytelling. Filmmakers wield immense power over public imaginations and intercommunal relations. Ethical responsibility requires resisting dehumanization and narrative simplification. What is the goal of all this? The goal is keeping populations poor and preoccupied. Persistent conflict, diverts public attention from inequality, unemployment, and governance failures. Militarization and nationalism absorb resources that could otherwise support social development. Economic insecurity and mass migration. Millions of Indians and Pakistanis seek economic survival through migration to Western countries. This reflects shared material hardship rather than civilization difference. The diaspora reality versus the homeland narratives. In Western societies, Indian and Pakistani migrants often live, work, and cooperate peacefully. They work together, they live in the same neighborhoods together, their children become friends and go to the same schools together because we're the same goddamn people. This everyday coexistence contradicts hostile nationalist narratives promoted at home. The twilight zone of cognitive dissonance. A profound cognitive dissonance emerges. Populations are taught to hate each other while surviving together abroad in foreign countries. This contradiction exposes the artificiality of nationalist antagonism. Of course, who is the culprit? White supremacy as a global structure. Critical race scholarship frames white supremacy not as an individual prejudice, but as a global hierarchy of power. Colonialism divided non-white populations to facilitate control and resource extraction. And why are most of these countries suffering today? Because of the same exact reason, where people don't have jobs, resources, etc., etc. All right, what is the conclusion that I'm getting at here? Is that anti-Pakistan and anti-Muslim narratives in Indian cinema function within broader political, economic, and post-colonial power structures. Recognizing these dynamics opens spaces for more honest dialogue and transformative cultural production. Here are some references that I have listed here. Please take a moment to pause and screenshot this and continue to study these further references that I have recommended to continue to understand this subject. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. Of course, all my videos are under the copyright laws of fair use for the purpose of honest dialogue, international laws of free speech, criticism, entertainment, and information and education purposes. Thank you so much. All rights reserved.